It started with a pair of eyes, soft golden, full of hope, peeking through the crack of an old wooden door. For anyone passing by, it was just a cat, but for the neighbors, it was a daily heartbreak. Every morning, at exactly 7 a.m., the cat would appear. She'd sit silently at the doorstep of a quiet, weathered house, her tail curled neatly around her small, fragile body. Rain or shine, cold or heat, she never missed a day. She waited. Her name was Miso. Nobody knew where she had come from. No one saw her arrive. But they remembered when the woman who lived in that house, Miss Eleanor, had vanished. Miss Eleanor had been kind. The kind of woman who talked to birds, who baked too many cookies, and who always had time to ask, "How are you really?" She was the soul of the street, and Miso had been her shadow. The two were inseparable. Miso followed her everywhere, to the mailbox, to the garden, even to the corner store when she could sneak out. Eleanor never called her a pet. "She's family," she used to say with a warm smile. But one winter evening, Eleanor didn't come home. She had gone to the hospital for a routine checkup and just didn't come back. No one knew what had happened for days. By the time the news came, it was too late. She had passed away in her sleep at the hospital. Quiet, alone, and no one thought to tell Miso. The door never opened again. The lights never came on. The air of the house changed. But Miso, she kept coming, waiting. Some neighbors tried to take her in, to give her food, a bed, warmth. But she always returned, always to the door, as if the sound of Eleanor's voice might echo again, as if one more second, one more minute, and the door would open. "She waits for her like it's still the first day," said old Mr. Crawford, watching from his porch. "Breaks your heart." One cold morning, as frost kissed the ground and silence hung thick, Miso did something she hadn't done before. She meowed. A single, soft meow at the door. Then another, louder this time. Then she pawed at it, gently at first, then with desperation. Inside, nothing moved. Dust clung to the curtains. Cobwebs draped over furniture. But if you stood close enough, you could almost feel it. The warmth that used to be there, the love still lingering in the walls. Miso pressed her head against the door, eyes closed, as if trying to remember the heartbeat behind it. A tear, yes, a real tear, slid down her whiskers. And she waited. Then footsteps. Not Eleanor's. Heavier. Slower. A man in a gray coat appeared at the end of the walkway. He was holding a bag, a paper tucked under one arm, and eyes full of sorrow. He hadn't been there in years. Eleanor's nephew, David. He stopped when he saw her. The little cat. The same one his aunt had told him about on the phone every week. "She's still here," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone. Miso looked up at him, but didn't move. Her eyes asked a question he couldn't answer. David knelt. "She never came back, huh?" Miso blinked. "I'm sorry," he said. And then, after a long pause, "Do you want to come with me?" She didn't. Instead, she turned back to the door, laid down quietly, and rested her chin on the wooden step. David stayed a while. Sat beside her. No words. Just silence. The kind that says everything. And then, the wind picked up. A paper fell from David's folder. Miso looked up. It was Eleanor's will. The last page read, "Asterisk, please take care of Miso. She'll be waiting." Asterisk. David read it twice. His throat tightened. He reached out gently. "Miso," he said softly. "She was waiting for me too." The cat looked into his eyes. And for the first time in months, she stood up. Not to leave. Just to listen. / To be continued in section 2. David came back the next day, this time with a carrier, some food, and a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender. Eleanor's favorite scent. He sat by the doorstep again, where Miso had returned, as expected, curled tightly beside the door like a question left unanswered. He didn't speak at first. Just sat. Let the silence do what words could not. Then he reached out, slowly placing the blanket beside her. Miso sniffed it. Her ears twitched. Her body eased just a little. She didn't run, and she didn't turn away. It was something. David began to speak, voice quiet, rough like a gravel road. "You know, I didn't visit her as often as I should have. Always one more meeting, one more excuse. She called, and I promised next time. But next time never came." Miso flicked her tail. Her gaze didn't shift from the door. "Guilt," he said. "It follows you around like a shadow, and it grows the longer you ignore it." A few neighbors passed by. One offered a kind wave. Another left a can of tuna on the porch. It had become a ritual now, a shared morning. For days, David returned. Every morning, every evening, he spoke to Miso, read old letters Eleanor had written him, played her favorite music, left her treats, toys, little comforts. And Miso, she listened. She never let him touch her. But she listened. One night, as the wind howled and the rain tapped like memories on the window panes, David stayed longer than usual. He brought an umbrella and sat under it, shivering beside her. "You know," he said, "she always told me she talked to you. Like really talked. Said you understood more than most people ever could. I used to laugh at that. Now, I think she was right." Miso looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she crept under the umbrella. That was the first night she didn't face the door. Winter deepened. Ice lined the sidewalks. Lights blinked in neighboring houses, warm and inviting. But Eleanor's house remained dark, still locked in time. David made calls, talked to lawyers, arranged to settle the estate. But every day, he returned to the doorstep. And Miso came too. Something had changed. She began to follow him, just a little at first. To the mailbox, to his car. She never climbed in, but she watched. Then one morning, she wasn't there. David panicked. He called. He searched the block, checked the alleys, asked every neighbor. No one had seen her. Hours passed. He sat on the porch, heart sinking, until a soft paw brushed against his leg. Miso, with something in her mouth. A small, frayed slipper, Eleanor's. She dropped it in front of him and sat. David blinked, stunned. "Where did you get that?" He followed her. Past the house. Down a path behind the garden. Through a gap in the fence. There, beneath the old lilac tree Eleanor used to sit under, was a hidden spot. A small dugout, lined with old blankets and trinkets. Miso's secret place. In the middle lay a faded photo. Eleanor, smiling, holding Miso as a kitten. David knelt. Tears welled in his eyes. "You kept her close all this time, didn't you?" Miso leaned gently into his hand. And this time she didn't pull away. The next morning, David unlocked Eleanor's front door for the first time in months. He stepped inside, holding Miso in his arms. Dust floated like memories in the sunlight. He didn't speak. He let the silence say goodbye. Miso jumped from his arms, wandered the house room by room. She rubbed her face on corners, sniffed her old bed, then sat by the window where Eleanor used to read. And for the first time since Eleanor left, the house didn't feel empty. David smiled through the ache. "We'll keep her alive. You and me." "Okay." Miso blinked slowly, the way cats do when they trust you. But outside something stirred. A van pulled up. A stranger stepped out, clutching a camera and a file with Eleanor's name on it. He looked up at the house, then at David. "Excuse me," he said. I think you might need to hear what I found." David frowned. "Found what?" The man looked serious. "About Eleanor, and what she left behind. / to be continued in section 3. David stepped onto the porch, shielding his eyes from the morning glare. Miso followed behind, tail curled, cautious but curious. The man held out his hand. "Name's Lucas. I'm a journalist, but more of a storyteller. I collect what people leave behind." David shook it slowly. "And what did Eleanor leave behind?" Lucas smiled softly. "A lot more than anyone expected." He opened the file. Inside were clippings, handwritten notes, and a worn journal with Eleanor's name etched into the leather. "She used to write to me," Lucas said, flipping to a marked page. "Stories, reflections, memories. She sent letters to our column for years under the name Yell and M." David's breath caught. Yell and M. Eleanor and Miso. Lucas nodded. "She told stories about her cat, her street, her thoughts on kindness, grief, and aging. Her words touched thousands. People didn't know her name, but they knew her heart." David sat down, eyes wide. "She never told me." "She didn't tell anyone," Lucas replied. "But she wanted someone to find it all eventually. To keep it alive." Miso jumped onto the porch railing, staring into the open journal. Lucas handed it to David. "She wrote this the week before she passed." David read aloud. *, if I leave before I say goodbye, let this be my voice. Let Miso remind you what loyalty looks like. Let the stories live, even when I don't. And let my home stay full of life, not dust. *. David choked up. She really thought of everything. Lucas nodded. She also left behind donations in her will for animal shelters. and set up something else, a reading corner at the community center. Named Miso's spot. David looked at Miso, who stretched and curled beside his feet. She really never stopped giving. That evening, the house lit up for the first time in months. David cleaned the windows, opened the curtains, and played Eleanor's favorite records. Neighbors brought flowers. Children tiptoed in, curious. And in the corner of the room, Miso lay quietly on her favorite rug, no longer waiting, just resting. Weeks passed. David moved in. Not to erase Eleanor's memory, but to honor it. He turned her library into a public reading nook, framed her letters, planted new flowers in her garden. Every morning, he and Miso would walk to the lilac tree, leave a pebble at the base, and whisper something into the wind. "You're still here," David would say. In every little thing. One spring afternoon, David stood by a podium at the community center. A new plaque gleamed beside him, Miso's spot, for stories that stay. Behind him, dozens of people listened, many with tears, others with smiles. Lucas had helped publish Eleanor's journal. It became a local treasure. And Miso, she sat beside David. Calm, confident, loved. Later that night, David lit a single candle in the window of Eleanor's old house. A quiet tradition. A way to say, "We remember." He leaned down, scratching Miso behind the ears. "You waited so long," he whispered. "Now we keep her with us. In every page, every paw step." Miso blinked slowly, curled beside him, and purred. Because sometimes, the ones we lose never really leave. They live on, in stories, in memories, and in the quiet love of those who stay. / The end.